Right then, hello everybody, and welcome to the corridor of uncertainty. You might be wondering, why are we in a corridor? Why are we uncertain? Well, we're going to talk about the beautiful game of cricket, aren't we, Charlie? Aren't we? Are we?
Yeah.
Yes,
we were uncertain even about the intro, which I think is the perfect start for the show.
Absolutely. It couldn't have gone much better than that. So the reason why we're doing this is that I, for the first time, watched a test series this summer under the advice of this beautiful man here, Charlie O'Brien, who has written for Wisden Cricket. He's written for the cricket paper. He knows everything there is to know, don't you, Charlie?
I know some of it, and yeah, Jonny
doesn't,
but he knows a lot about sport in general, and he knows how to ask the right questions. And I was very happy when the series turned out to be one of the best series ever, probably. But also, even before that, in the first day, I told him to watch it, and I was a little bit nervous to check up on him when I saw the score was 120 for 1 or something. And he just said, I love watching Gill bat, I love watching Jaiswal bat. So I was like, okay, he gets it, he's going to enjoy this. And then it went on to be a fantastic chase in that game, and then a crazy game at Lord's, crazy game at the Oval, so now you're hooked.
I got lucky, didn't I? I think sometimes when just generally getting into stuff, but certainly with sport, as a massive F1 fan, I find that you need to be lucky with which race people see first. And I think it was the perfect introduction, the drama of it all. I really enjoyed watching Richard Pant with his theatrics. And I just think that I got lucky with which test I saw first. And I thought to myself, gotta watch the Ashes now. Can't wait for this winter. And we said, well, while we're doing that, why don't we have a chat about it? And Charlie can bestow some of his expert wisdom upon me.
Yeah, just one thing you said there. I think you got lucky to an extent, but it is just the case these days that a test series between England, India, Australia, you just have to tune in. It's always great, and especially in England, because England know how to win tests in England, but Australia and India also know how to win tests in England. So you do need to tune in for any of these series, Ashes included. But the Ashes in Australia, England do not know how to win in Australia. But there is a growing sense over the last couple of years that this England team will know how to win a test in Australia, at least one.
That's why it's so exciting, isn't it? Because it also feels like the whole Bazball era has been building up to this. So let's get into it. Let's dig into the meat of this Ashes series, shall we, Charlie? When does it start? And let's throw ourselves into some talking points.
Yeah, so it starts on the 21st of November in the Optus Stadium in Perth. That's on the west of Australia. It's the only test that they play in the west of Australia. It is traditionally where the Ashes starts. It's in a new venue, the Optus Stadium, which has replaced the Wacker as the stadium over there on that side of that massive country. But much to everyone's sort of joy, the new stadium has kept the characteristics of the old stadium, which is that it's one of the fastest pitches in the world. It's one of the bounciest pitches in the world. And it's probably the one that will retain the traditional Australian conditions the best, and will be an Ashes test that we have seen in previous years, which is exactly why England have bought the bowlers that they have.
So let's get into that, shall we? Shall we get into the England attack?
Yes.
Because I remember you saying to me a little voice note that you provided me in the planning and preparation for this here podcast, is that we know what the Aussie bowling attack is going to be. We pretty much know what the England batting lineup is going to be. So the big question mark is the England attack, and you're not necessarily taking your best bowlers, across the world, or across all of the series that you could possibly play. You're taking the best bowlers for these conditions in Australia.
Yeah, and it's something that this regime deserves credit for. I think there's been a lot of forward planning. I think this plan was put in place 2 years ago, which the way that news cycles, the England news cycles work, that I'm sure you will become accustomed to over the years is that everything is looking towards the next Ashes. And I think England deserve a lot of credit this time around for, if you're going to be talking about the Ashes for 2 years, since the last Ashes, you may as well actually prepare for the Ashes. And that's what they've done. It would be the first Ashes without Broad or Anderson since 2007.
How big is that?
It's a great question. How big is that? James Anderson is probably the best England bowler of all time, but he was never an Ashes specialist. His record against Australia, even in England, isn't as good as against other teams. Stuart Broad was an Ashes competitor. He loved the fight. But I do think that neither of them were ever suited to Australia. The question now that we'll get onto in a little while, after we've spoken about these England bowlers, is would they now have suited these conditions? Have they changed, and should Anderson be on the plane? But for now, I think I'm not convinced how big of a deal it is that they're not there, which sounds crazy because they were English cricket for 20 years. Excuse me. But they never won. They won one series over there. Anderson bowled brilliantly. But the forgotten players of that tour, who you are not likely to have heard of, are Chris Tremlett and Stephen Finn, and they were tall and they were quick.
So tall and quick, those are the two. They're buzzwords, aren't they,
Yes.
for an Ashes series?
Absolutely, and it's the Australian attack. They're tall, they're quick. Mitch Starc is a giant, and he used to be probably the fastest bowler in the world for a while. And then Cummins and Hazelwood, yes, they're tall, yes, they're quick. But I think the correct word is they're tall enough and they're quick enough. And they combine that with incredible accuracy. They're metronomes. So yes, tall and quick are buzzwords, but also, accuracy is a buzzword, and that is the main question mark, I think, over this England attack is, are they going to be able to put it on the same spot enough? I think we saw from the Oval Test that Josh Tongue isn't going to be able to do that. He has other skills. I think that Archer can do that. I think that Atkinson can do that. I think that Wood is just a battering ram. I think that Matt Potts, if he's called upon, can do that. And you do say that. I think England knew they wanted to identify new bowlers, and they knew they wanted to look past the raw county numbers. Bryden Carse is a great example of that. He's the one we haven't touched on yet. He has average county championship numbers, but he's built for away conditions. He did excellently in Pakistan, which is an incredibly hard place to bowl. He's on record as saying he prefers the ball they use in Australia, which
that
is probably
can only be a good thing, surely.
Absolutely, and he's probably the only English seamer that you will find who says that. He's South African, by the way, which again is probably something that you're not fully clued in on as someone who's just started.
Well, that's the thing, and I think we should try as we go along to make it very clear that I am an absolute novice. I've only seen that India Test. I loved it, don't get me wrong, but Charlie's been saying to me, you've got to get into cricket, you've got to watch it. It's like, and my dad was saying, it's like warfare, it's like chess, you'll love it. And I did love it, but this is, as much as it is, our lovely listeners getting Charlie's wonderful wisdom and knowledge on the subject of cricket, but also it's, for me, a learning exercise on the ins and outs of the sport, trying to get to grips with it quickly, because there's so many buzzwords, as a football fan, as a Formula One fan, as a tennis fan, that, the layman might not understand. And it's going to take me time, and I'm looking forward to learning on the fly, and you can all laugh at how little I know. And if you don't watch as much cricket, they can learn with us, and I think that's another reason why we're doing this, Charlie. So you're going to be my teacher, you're my guru.
Exactly, and I think on that note, let's go off on our first tangent, which is that I think if I said to someone who was a bit more clued up on cricket that Bryden Carse was South African, probably it'd be a shrug of the shoulders, if that, absolutely no reaction.
But I raised my eyebrows when you said that.
So many English cricketers over the past 20 years have been South African. Kevin Peterson is the most famous example, and he's on record as saying he left the South African system for the English system because he believed he was the quotas brought out after apartheid were hampering his ability to get in the team. And whether or not you agree with that, there has been a move towards a lot of white South Africans playing for England.
So how does the selection process work then? Is it similar to football, where if you live in the country from a certain age, or if you play for a certain club as a youth player, or even if you have heritage, does there have to be some sort of connection with the country that you go and play for?
It's a lot more lenient than football. It's basically, if you play in the country for long enough, then you can play for the country. Players will make the decision early, or at a point in their career, to play English domestic cricket rather than South African, for example, domestic cricket, because they know there's an eligibility window, and the sooner they start, the sooner they can play for England. We see it in South Africa as well. In New Zealand as well. And not only is there wiggle room, I think countries are willing for there to be even more wiggle room if there's a player they really want. England bent their own rules on Jofra Archer to get him in time for the 2019 World Cup. And you've seen Italy snap up a lot of ex-internationals at the minute, called Joe Burns, who used to play for Australia, and they're pushing for a T20 World Cup place, just with a lot of players not from Italy. But, it's just not frowned upon in the same way that it is in football. I think there's still people that can't believe that Jack Grealish and Declan Rice have played for England and Ireland. There's loads and loads of players that have played for two countries. There's players that have played for England and Australia. But if you go back as far as the 1800s...
Surely you couldn't get away with that now?
Probably. Well, Josh Inglis, who scored a fantastic century against England in the Champions Trophy, was born in Leeds, which is where we are right now.
Yes. Hello from Headingley.
Yeah. So no, you can do it. There was a lot of talk about one of the Surrey bowlers, Dan Worrell. He's just become eligible. He's in his 30s, but he's been an absolute machine for Surrey at the top of the First Division. And there was a lot of talk about 6 months ago about, do you get this guy in for the Ashes? He's Australian. And he wanted it. I think, he didn't push for it, but he said he would accept the call. It hasn't happened, but I don't think it's inconceivable that you'd see an Australian play for England in the Ashes.
You'd think there'd be such backlash. In Australia, for example, if an Australian, turned out for England.
There would be. There would be. I think that's a special case, but I don't think... I think it's thought of differently. David Saker is one of the coaches for England this time round, and he's Australian. He was England's bowling coach when England won the Ashes in 2010-11. So as much as it is an incredibly partisan sport and it has its roots in colonialism, and there are teams that genuinely hate each other,
wow.
We share players.
I'm going to be doing so much learning over the course of this podcast. Bowlers, Charlie. Let's go back to bowlers. Are you happy with the England attack?
I am happy with the England attack. I think it's as good as it could have been, and I think they have been vindicated in their strategy by the fact that they have everyone to pick from. No one has got injured. I think there's a world where Archer and Wood broke down 2 months before, and the noise would have been, this was obviously going to happen. How could you move on from Anderson, who was so reliable in terms of fitness? How could you risk so much on these bowlers? But no, I do think they've got their best attack. They're all quick, but a lot of the best bowlers are quick. Australia's slowest bowler is quick. He's as quick as Atkinson, Scott Boland. In our minds, he's like a county Dobler. He bowls 78. He bowls 85 miles an hour, and he lands it on the same spot every time, crucially. And I think, as I've said, I think England will bowl fast. The question is that what they needed? And it is a good question, because conditions have changed in Australia. I need to first let you know what they were initially. They were flat, they were fast, they were bouncy. They were a place where you needed to dig in, grind out big runs, but it was something that only Australia really ever found easy to do. Travelling teams didn't. And I think part of the reason travelling teams didn't is that Australia consistently have an attack which is, fast, tall, accurate and varied, and with a good spinner as well. I think England have an attack that's fast, I think England have an attack that's varied.
Spinner? Question mark.
I think they don't have a. I think they don't have a spinner, and I think they're not guaranteed to have accuracy. However, conditions have changed. We've seen average scores decreasing year on year. We've seen an almost role reversal in the last 5 years of English Test matches, which were usually 250 plays 250 plays 200, and then the team would either chase it or they wouldn't. Whereas in Australia, you'd see teams go big, bat once, win by an innings. I think we've seen a role reversal in that. I think England pitches are deliberately very flat as a result of Bazball, and I think Australian pitches are deliberately more lively as a result of probably of them realising that the bowling is now their strong suit in a way that it hasn't always been. I think there was a time in the noughties when they were just the best at both, and then there was a time in the 2010s when they had a good batting lineup and not a good bowling lineup, and I think that's now flipped on his head. So I think England are very well prepared for the last Ashes, but they're not playing the last Ashes, they're playing this Ashes. However, I still think that a low-scoring series can suit England, because I think that in low-scoring games, Harry Brook just has to go berserk for an hour and a half and he can win the game. I think what England have actually shown a lack of ability to do is to really put their foot on the throat when conditions are in their favour. I think India, in the last series in India, realised this. And after the first test was won by England, it was a shootout. It was spinning from ball one. One player went berserk, Ollie Pope, 196, and that was enough for them to win the game. India very quickly corrected to make pitches that were true, that you could make huge scores on, and then they went on to make huge scores and England didn't. So I do think that as much as the thinking that's probably led to this England setup is based on conditions that have changed, I still think they're a good team for the conditions that they are likely to see.
Cool. And if we talk about, move on to batters, for a time here, in theory, this is where England should be in a good spot. You've got Joe Root, who is one of the greats. We'll get on to his missing century, of course. It's been spoken about a lot. Does it need to be spoken about? We're going to speak about it. You've got Duckett opening. You've got Brook, as you say. Stokes on the big occasion can pull something out of the bag. Is that England's strongest area?
Yeah, and it's settled for the first time since they won the Ashes down under in 2010-11. It's settled, which I think we're just not used to as a nation. And I think conversely, there's been a lot made of Australia's batting lineup being unsettled by us, which it isn't. But it's just the first time in a very long time that there's been more question marks over the Australian batting lineup than there has the English. So yeah, it is in a good spot. They just gel. They have gelled incredibly well together. I think they all know their roles. I think there's a Venn diagram that players fall into. I am worried about each and every one of them for different reasons. And I think the Venn diagram reads as the players who I'm worried about, do they have the temperament to score the runs in Australia? The players I'm worried about, do they have the technique to score runs in Australia? So if you start with technique, I think unfortunately the players that fall into this category are our three best batters. That's Joe Root, Ben Duckett, Harry Brook. I think over the last 3 years, they have been, you'd probably even say England's three best players, let alone batters. I think they all have their own reasons why Australia isn't the place they'd choose to bat if they could. I think Joe Root, much has been made of him not scoring a century. Much has been made of that being around what they call the dab to third man. That's when he just opens the face of the bat and just, as late as possible, just knocks it on its head, as Nasser Hussain likes to say. It runs between the slips and the gullies for a boundary, if you're in England. Or if you're in Australia, it bounces a foot higher than you're expecting. It catches a thick edge.
Which means it's going about 5 miles above Ben Duckett's head.
Yes, exactly. But not Cam Green's head, who is the man who will be stood at gully. Do you know what gully is?
Tell me what gully is.
You know what the slips are?
Yes.
So slip, 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 and then traditionally gap, gully. So he's like a very wide slip, like closer to square. And while a slip is there to catch a thin edge, or a wicketkeeper, a gully is there to catch maybe a thick edge, or maybe it could go flush off the face of the bat. And they have a man there in Cam Green who is the best in the world. He's massive. He's got buckets for hands. He takes ridiculous catches. And you could easily see a world where Harry Brook or Joe Root or Ollie Pope absolutely creams one in that direction and he catches it.
Should we write out like a bingo card of these things you're expecting to see, Charlie, and we can cross them off?
Yes.
We'll play Ash's bingo. That could be quite a fun thing to do.
Cam Green screamer at gully were definitely on there, and I'm sure there'll be some others that emerge during the course of this chat. So yeah, that's Root. I think we'll talk a little bit more about him specifically in a bit, but that's the main worry with him. I think with Ben Duckett, it's similar. He loved just sticking his bat out and just guiding it. And in England, that gets you runs. I think in Australia, that gets you out. And then Harry Brook just loves hitting the ball aerially. That's his game, whether he's trying to pull it or whether he's just trying to
We saw that, didn't we, against India?
Yes.
Where he'd made a really large total. I think it might have been the final test when he was probably our best batsman on the day, and he just launched one into the heavens. And I remember us having a conversation about how it's difficult to blame someone who's made a ton plus for a defeat, but actually you kind of can, because they're in the groove, they're in the rhythm, the attack is struggling with them. It's up to you to go and win the game. Is that a question mark over Brook, or is that a one-time occurrence?
It is a question mark over him, but he showed encouraging amount of humility and disappointment at himself after that game. And I think that's in the back of the mind. And all the England players have been speaking about wanting to get smarter. I think Harry Brook is like the Cole Palmer of English cricket, where part of his brilliance is in his simplicity of thought, shall we say. So you don't want to put too much in his head.
You're not calling him an idiot. That's not what you're doing.
No, I'm not. And like, he's a genius if we're talking in cricket terms. So it is a worry, but also he's the epitome of like, you have to let him play his own way. And when England are in trouble, that's when he goes berserk. And that's when it works the best. In the ODI series versus New Zealand, we've just seen he played one of the best innings ever in an England ODI shirt. When everyone else, when wickets were tumbling around him, he was just dancing around the track. He was just hitting it to all parts. The reason I bring it up in this context, and something that you need to know, is that Australian pitches are massive, like outfields. Everywhere else in the world, in England specifically, it's like many things in England, the grounds are so historic and they're in the middle of the city centres, and they weren't built with any foresight about what might happen in the future. As a result, as the need to expand them has grown over the years, the only way we've been able to build is in. As a result, the outfields are on the whole very small. Whereas Australia, they have these huge purpose-built stadiums. The MCG is almost 100,000 capacity. Taylor Swift plays there when she tours. So they have not needed to bring those boundaries in, and they are massive. And there was a lot of talk in the last Ashes about England making the boundaries smaller to suit Bazball. It ended up just being chat. But Australia will want to make those boundaries as big as possible. And I think that will mean Brook is taking massive risks when he's hitting the ball in the air. So that's one camp. And then there's the camp who do have the technique, but you worry about other things. That's Zach Crawley.
You did a whole piece on Zach Crawley, didn't you?
Yes, which will be on my Substack soon. I'm going to get it up before the first test.
Charlie's all over Zach Crawley.
And I like him. I think I have the same relationship that a lot of people do with him, where I do want him to do well. But he is an anomaly in the fact that most times when you think of a player who you think would do well in Australia, or do well against Pat Cummins, do well against Mitchell Starc, it's because they're one of the best players in the world. He's not one of the best players in the world. He just so happens that his number one skill is playing the best bowlers in the world.
Good skill to have.
Yes. So hopefully he will do well. I think where you worry about him is, does he have the mindset and the appetite to go big, score big runs? I think he's shown in the past that he's lacked that when he's got in and got out. But if he's going to do it, it'll be now, and he needs to do it now, I think. And then the other one is Jamie Smith. He has similar technical abilities to Zach Crawley. He's very tall, very good straight down the ground, very good on the pull. And I think he looks tailor-made for Australia. And the only question mark around him is he's just very unproven. He's not played Australia. He's the only member of the top 6 that hasn't.
We were in the pub, Charlie, weren't we, the other day? We were playing a game of pool, and we were discussing Pope and Bethel. And you were telling me about how, at the moment, they've gone with Pope, but because of the vice-captaincy situation, there is a school of thought which suggests they might be prepared to drop him. Discuss.
Yeah, and he was the next player I was going to come on to, because he's in the middle of that Venn diagram, and he's the only person I have in the middle of that Venn diagram. I worry about his technique and his temperament for Australia. And he's a player who... Let me just get my numbers up.
He's got his numbers up. He's a statistical man, is Charlie. You'll come to know this.
You don't have to do... The thing about Ollie Pope is you don't have to dig very far to find interesting numbers. And again, this is something that I think any cricket nuffies listening will be bored to death of, but I think it's important for you to know. Ollie Pope is a fascinating player because he's someone whose strengths and weaknesses are borne out in his raw numbers in a way that other people's aren't. Like, it's just obvious. You don't have to do advanced metrics to find out what Ollie Pope is good at and what he isn't. They're just right there on the first page of his ESPN Cricinfo. So he averages 15 against Australia from quite a small sample size. That's compared to an average of 41 batting at number 3, which he has done for most of the Bazball era, which is very good. However, I think there's a thought that I think he's in the unique position of, even if he scores 100 in the first test, the eyes will still be on him, because his average by tests in a series, so in one-off tests, which he's played against, in one-off tests, which he's played against Ireland and Zimbabwe, he averages 188. In the first match of tests, of a test series, he averages 36. And then in the second, he averages 30. And then by the time we get to the fifth, he's averaging 13 and a half.
So we're seeing a decline, is what we're saying.
Yeah, and that happens within matches as well. It's common for a player to have their best average in first innings, because that's when the conditions are good, traditionally. And also, that's when you score big runs. That's how you win matches. You go big in the first innings, and then you might not have to go big in the third or the fourth innings. However, average by innings of Ollie Pope, he averages 52 in the first, 42 in the second, 22 in the third, 16 in the fourth. So he's a player who we know what he's going to do. And even if it goes well, he could end up with an average of 40 at the end of the series, and that could be because he had a good start. And theoretically, and hopefully, if there's that fifth test decider, England could be chasing 300 and he could get out straight away.
So in a way, does that make a case for, if he is stronger out the blocks, that as we start to see a bit of a turn and he's, maybe, third test, he goes cheaply, how quickly do you think that decision could be made?
It's interesting. I think, as you say, they're priming themselves to make that decision. They've been a lot less supportive of him than they have of any other player in the media. They've made it very clear that Bethel could slot in at 3. In reality, Bethel is the spare batter. The way they do it is they have one batter in the squad, and if anyone gets injured, Bethel will be in for him. It's what happened at the Oval for Stoke, 'cause he was batting 6. Last time he was in the team, he batted 3. He could bat anywhere. But it is interesting that they've framed him as a potential number 3. But it would be very out of the blue for England to make a mid-series batting change, because they haven't done it yet. They have not once done it under the Bazball era, replace someone during a series. Ollie Pope got injured in the last Ashes and he was obviously out the team, but they have never, for form-related reasons, dropped someone mid-series. I do think Ollie Pope will probably play the whole series. I do think it's right to start with Ollie Pope. I do think that the Bethel conversation has been overblown, and I think it's a clear example of what the media can do. After so much talk and anger about England not picking players on merit, on home form, and that was exactly what was said when he was in that squad for New Zealand. He'd not scored a professional 100. He'd never batted at 3. And then he goes on to score 3 50s, good 50s, but in low pressure situations, every one of them. And now the conversation is, how the hell can you be starting Pope over Bethel? This guy's the future. And then he gets his chance finally in that Oval Test. He plays a bad innings. We switch right back to, how can you put this guy in the team? He's a baby.
Which can't be good. It can't be good for him as a developing player.
It can't be good for him, but England are very good at shutting out the noise, as they like to say. It's a bit of a cliche, but I think what the way the press and the way that fans online like to be hyperbolic is very far away from what is happening in that England dressing room. And I think that he will be fine. They all say, whenever they're asked this kind of stuff, you know, that they've never been in an environment like the one that they're in with McCullum and Stokes, that they know how to get the best out of them, that they know how to make them feel good about themselves. And I think that 2 lads sitting on the floor in a corridor
with a bathroom in the background,
front of a bathroom, will not get to their heads, as will anything else, including...
Wouldn't it be incredible if we were the last straw?
Yeah.
As Bethel came out and said, right, Charlie and Jonny, I can't have it anymore. I'm coming on the podcast to have it out with you. But please do. But you went on to Bethel without me steering you. So let me steer you in another direction, Charlie, towards Mr. Root. We have to touch on it. The century, that missing century, the almost mythical century down under. It's got to happen, hasn't it?
It does have to happen, and I think the last 4 years of Root's career, the last 5 years almost, have been about him silencing every doubt that has been levied against him. He went on an insane run of form. Basically, as he was about to lose the captaincy, England won 1-17. They were awful. And he stood up. He wasn't blameless because he was the captain and he wasn't a good captain. But he stood up. He made 226 in Sri Lanka, followed by 186 in the very next game, followed by a double 100 in the next game against India. That summer he scored 300s in 3 games against India. And I think, so the question marks about him being able to do it away have been answered. The question marks about him fitting into Bazball have been answered. He has played more expansively and it's worked. Then he's not gone into a shell, but he's reverted to type a little bit, and that's worked. He's sorted out his conversion rate. Is that something that you would like explaining?
Do it.
So a conversion rate, anything in cricket scorecard terms or in stat terms, it's slightly confusing. Any score between 50 and 99 is a 50. Any score 100 plus is 100. So if you were to score a 50, go on to score 100, in your stats, that is 100, it's not 50. Right. So we've seen it with Root where, for example, you could theoretically score your 50th 50 100 times if you went on to convert that 50 to 100 every time. And I remember there was definitely a point with Root, I think it was his fifth, like where they said, you know, that's his 50th 50 in Test match cricket. And then he converted that into 100. And then the next game he scored a 50. That's his 50th 50 in Test match cricket. So conversion rate is how often you convert a 50 into 100. And Root fell way behind the other best batters of his generation in this metric, Kohli and Smith especially. But he's completely put that to bed. He scores so many hundreds now. I think he had 21 at the start of the period, which I'm referring to, which was winter 2021. And now he has 38. So that's put to bed. The only thing that isn't put to bed is the 100 in Australia. And he has had a chance to put that right in this time period, because the last Ashes, he didn't do great. He did okay. But it was in the context of him coming to the end of his captaincy. It was a nightmare series. And he scored some 50s, as he likes to do. And he didn't convert. And I do think that when he got there last time, the conversation was, this is the best he's ever been. So if he doesn't do it now, when's he going to do it? He's here now, and this is still the best he's ever been. So I think he will. And Matthew Hayden, former Australian opener, has promised that he'll walk around the MCG naked if Root doesn't score 100. So I think none of us would like to see that, because he's a 6'5" man who wears a cowboy hat. And I have a worrying feeling that the cowboy hat will stay on. So let's all hope that he scores 100.
Absolutely. Well, you mentioned there some of the Aussie media, and we've got written down here in the notes doc that we drafted up, that you largely drafted up, to be honest, Charlie, because I wouldn't know where to start. Is some of the media barbs between the two nations. Obviously, this is such a tribal. The Ashes, the England Australia. It's such a historical rivalry, such a gripping rivalry, and that means that it's not just the players, not just the sides, but it's the whole nations, and it's the medias who are at each other's throats as well. What's been the talk of the town?
So there's a lot about stuff about Root. A lot of it centres around David Warner, and this will be the first Ashes without him in quite a while. He is a pantomime villain, and he loves being a pantomime villain, as does Stuart Broad. He is the pantomime villain for England. And those two had a very famous rivalry, which Broad got the better of. Dismissed Warner 17 times in Test cricket, which is
Broad. He's my man, Broad. I love him.
Yes, and I think Broad and Warner, as much as they were pretty good at the whole cricket stuff, I think they're even better at this stuff.
The PR.
Yeah, so I think their battle will continue long into the future, and they've shared jives. Warner's said that Joe Root needs to take the surfboard off of his front pad. Which, that's not a cricket phrase that you need to learn, but it's in the context of basically Root getting out LBW to the Australian seamers. So Warner's decided to say that he has a surfboard on his front pad. Broad has hit back and said this is the worst Australian team since England last won the Ashes Down Under, which again, is not true. They're number one in the world. They're a very good team. But the bit that I really wanted to shine a light on is the Aussie, the press, and the West Australian, because this is in Perth, so this is a West Australian. And there's been a series of absolutely fantastic headlines from them. We are, a little bit of background from us, we are recently qualified journalists.
We are.
And I think a lot of the stuff we've learnt in media law doesn't seem to apply to the written Aussie press, because this is the series of headlines that we've got so far. Basically, this is within the context of Ben Stokes arrived a little bit early. He's not in the white ball squads anymore, so he could arrive when he wanted, and he arrived early to train, and he's been papped ever since. He's been papped getting off the plane, he's been papped in training, and the series of headlines were... So this is the first one. As he was getting off the plane, Baz Ball, B-A-W-L, England's cocky captain complainer, still smarting from Creasegate, lands in Perth early, thinking dopey Baz Ball can take the Ashes. And then
slightly one-sided.
Slightly, and then the first couple of paragraphs of that were Kiwi-born Ben Stokes. He's from New Zealand.
I see.
The king of England's self-proclaimed reinvention of cricket, dubbed Baz Ball, has sauntered into Perth, confident the crazed brand of carefree and careless thrash batting, untested in Australia, will reclaim the Ashes.
Oh, I would love it if we beat them. This is the thing. I didn't know that this... You hear about the Ashes, you hear about the rivalry, but instantaneously upon hearing about the way that the Aussie media have gone about it, you wouldn't read that here about them.
No, and we do get cheeky, but that's the thing. We like to be cheeky in this country.
Yeah. That is just outright.
There's no nuance in Australia.
No.
There's more. Despite the hype, England's cavalier style has been overshadowed by their consistent whinging about the Australians in the famous Creasegate scandal. That's Jonny Bairstow being stumped.
Yeah.
In the last Ashes, or more recently when Stokes and his mates tried to bully India into ending a game early in the spirit of cricket. And that's also something really interesting that, what part of the brilliance of the England-India series that we didn't touch on earlier was the needle. It was a fantastic needle. But it was done, I think, between England and India, it was done in good spirit. And after the series, both teams were very full of praise for the other.
Yeah.
No one got more angry about Handshake Gate than the Australians, even though it happened in the middle of the night.
Yeah. Yeah.
For some reason,
In a
they woke
different,
up
far away. Yeah.
and decided to get really angry about it. And they're still talking about it. I think everyone else has forgotten about that, to be honest. I think Handshake Gate was a story for a week until we then had a concluding test, which was one of the best tests of all time. Everyone completely forgot about it.
India forgot about it.
Yeah, but one set of people didn't. And then there's a few more. So this is now under the context of, there's three more that are all like photos of him in training, just photos of Stokes in training. No balls. England captain has first net in Perth, but isn't ready to bowl yet.
Right.
He's now bowling. He's fine.
Right.
But I think, it's not hard to see what they were trying to insinuate with that. Sitting duck. England captain cuts a lonely figure at first Ashes net session in Perth, with most of his arrogant teammates not even bothering to turn up yet.
Oh no!
So that was a photo of him on his own. We might be able to insert.
We'll insert that.
There's a photo of him just sat on his own, looking fine.
Can I just say, people do sit on their own?
Yes,
that you're allowed to do that.
Happen.
Yeah.
And then the last one of him laughing because his teammates have arrived. Yeah. Look who's laughing. Stokes smiling in the face of danger as skipper finally shows some balls, meaning he started bowling. It's funny. Like, I have to admit, it's funny.
Yeah.
But it's just also funny. Like, most of these were front page as well. They weren't back page. They were front page. Of the
Ben
newspaper.
Stokes sat on his own is front page news, scraping the barrel over there in Australia is what I would say.
But it's you can call it scraping the barrel, but you also can say that it shows how big of a deal the Ashes is.
100%.
That is front page news, even when nothing is happening. And we've been talking about it for 2 months when nothing is happening. So it is very exciting and it's good. You can't talk cricket without existentializing whether it's still going to be a thing in 10 years' time. It obviously is. But in that context, it's good to know that we still care this much. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, this debate is one that could really rage on, and we've had it a lot even from my sort of outside looking in position, is, the way that it seems that the direction cricket seems to be going in, whether it wants to or not, is a story for another day, I suppose, is shorter formats, faster pace. We see it with the hundreds, but Test cricket is always the best cricket. Is it not?
It is the best cricket. It doesn't force you to watch the whole thing. I can understand why, from a TV perspective, it's a lot more difficult to market. But ultimately, you can dip in and out in a way that you just can't in other forms of cricket. You can watch half an hour of Test cricket. Maybe nothing will happen, but maybe it's utterly compelling. It is the best cricket. The problem with it that could be relevant to this series, and I hope it isn't, is that when you're getting thrashed, it still takes 3 days for you to get thrashed.
It's a slow death, isn't it?
It is. And I'm very much hoping. I think I was saying to you the other day, I think there's an appetite even in some Australians this time for this to be a close series. The way that it works is that you only need to draw the series to retain the Ashes. So as soon as you're 3-0 up or 2-0 up with 2 to play, if you're Australia, you've won. And it's happened many a time. where this 2-month epic has been done before the new year. And I don't think anyone wants that this time.
No, absolutely not. And we've had a few occasions, certainly in the last Ashes, where of course Broad had his fairy tale ending, which was to draw the Ashes, which of course allowed Australia to retain it. Weather has played a part, certainly in this country. You would imagine that would be less likely in Australia. How does that work?
So, good question. And the answer is, for the most part, yes. There's only one ground in the world that rivals Old Trafford in Manchester for the most amount of days rained off, and that's Sydney.
Wow, okay.
Which will be the 4th test. Or is it the 5th? No, it would be the last.
Oh.
Which I believe is the last test this year.
Right.
So if we are 2-2 and it gets rained off,
then that would be gutting.
I have deleted Twitter. I might have to re-download it on that day because.
So I'm going to get up a list of all the dates for the Ashes test, and therefore I think will it give us locations? And what we can maybe do is you could give us a little breakdown, Charlie, of each location, how that will affect the narrative, where we might sit at that point. So you're absolutely right. Sydney is the 5th and final test. That's the 3rd to the 7th of January. First test, 21st to the 25th of November. We've touched on Perth. Should we have a chat about Brisbane?
Yeah, I think what's important about Brisbane is that it's a day-night test.
Right.
Which you won't have watched yet. It's not something we do in this country. It's not something that's been adopted properly anywhere other than Australia. But the thinking behind it is that in countries, we're a country of unemployed people. Yeah. We're a country of people who have expendable income and free time. DOSers. And we have no qualms, no trouble filling a stadium on a Tuesday afternoon with loads of people who are drinking.
Yes.
Other countries don't necessarily have that same culture, and they also have bigger stadiums, which they find harder to fill on a working day. And the day-night test is designed to make test cricket at hours which more people will be able to watch and attend. So it usually starts at around 2 p.m. local time and runs to about 9. They get around this by playing with a pink ball, which can be seen in the day and the night. And the pink ball, what's great about cricket, and I think I've told you a bit about this, is how conditions dependent it is. Yeah. And that is never more true than when you're playing a pink ball test, because the ball behaves differently. And that period where the artificial light takes over from the natural light is known to be a very difficult time to bat. England have won a pink ball test in the past by being very smart about this. They batted first in a pink ball test in New Zealand, scored 320 in 2 sessions all out, which is a decent total, but would usually take 4 sessions. And that allowed them to declare on 320 and to bowl under lights with the pink ball and just wreak havoc on New Zealand. So again, I think England are better placed than previous England teams to deal with a day-night test. However, Australia have played by far the most of these games. They've won all of them apart from one. Mitchell Starc is the best pink ball bowler in the world. And
things are adding up here in one direction, Charlie.
Yes, and they know what they're doing with scheduling. They know to put somewhere like Perth first. It used to be the Gabatoir as they'd call it, because they never lost there. Now it's Perth. And then they follow that up 1-2 combination with a day-night test.
So they're looking to win it. They won 2-0. We've won it. Yeah. We at least retained it. If they get to 3.
And that is usually how it plays out. And then Adelaide is a lovely ground. It's got really interesting proportions. It's very short square boundaries and very long boundaries straight, which probably has more of a impact in a white ball game, but I am interested to see if that could maybe aid England. I think England have a chance there. Again, different format, but one of their best victories of the past decade was at Adelaide. They beat India by 10 wickets in a T20. I think that is probably the one that's the least worrying. But it could be all over by then. Melbourne is the Boxing Day test. That's always the Boxing Day test. It's usually the third test. It's interesting that it's not this time. But that will kick off on Boxing Day in Australia. It will be about half an hour before Christmas ends in England. So I will be snuggling up in bed and putting it on.
Beautiful. If only I could join you, Charlie.
That will be... The MCG will be packed for at least the first day, 90,000 people. That is like a huge tradition there. That is traditionally flat, but that is one of the ones that we've seen a trend towards more grass being left on the pitch. And I think that will aid the seamers. And again, Sydney, that's traditionally the one that spins a bit. It's interesting, there are parallels with Old Trafford, where Old Trafford is seen as the one that spins, but then it's also the one where it rains. I don't think you can draw a connection between the two. I think it's just a coincidence because rain and spin are not traditionally... But then Sri Lanka rains a lot and it spins more than anywhere in the world.
Maybe could rain equal spin, or
no? Heat equals spin.
Right.
I think that genuinely is a set of coincidences. But again, I think that is somewhere where the conditions have changed over time, and I think this time you can draw less. You can be less sure about unique characteristics of each ground. I think this time, on average, there will be some pretty low scoring games. I think Perth is probably the one that stands out as traditional Australian, as we said.
Okay.
And if we want to bring that back to the bowling attack England have selected, I think Perth, you want to go Wood, Archer, Atkinson. I think they'll probably start strongest. But maybe the other ones, like Melbourne, are where you could have seen an Anderson or a Wokes being a little bit more handy than in previous years. But we have Matt Potts in the squad. I really hope he plays some games. I think he's a little bit slower. He's accurate. He bowls a good length. I think we'll see him at some point.
So we've got it in front of us here, Charlie. We've got the schedule, we've got the dates, we've got the locations, we've got the timings. Let's do a little bit of predictive power, shall we? What do you think is going to go down? We'll sense the mood, the Charlie O'Brien mood. How is he feeling ahead of this Ashes? Let's go test by test. We've mentioned that Perth is a bit of an Aussie stronghold. What are you expecting to see in each of these, and how do you see it going?
I think if I want to predict what I want to predict over the whole series, I have to say that England will win the first test.
Okay, so you basically have to ignore what we've just said.
Yes. Well, I think more importantly to what we've just said is that if England don't win the first test, then they won't win the series.
Right.
Especially if they don't win either of the first two tests.
And the first two tests happen to be, for various reasons, you would say the Aussies are looking good, or they'll go in there confident with the pink ball set up at Brisbane and what we were talking about with Perth earlier. Is that alarm bells for you?
I think England have to come flying out the blocks, and I think Perth is actually the place for them to do that.
Right.
I think that's where their attack will be the most dangerous. I think they might be able to take advantage of some of the question marks around the Aussies. I think they have to, and they are also... The way this England team differs from previous England teams is they actually start tours very strong. They have... I'm just making sure that I'm saying... Yeah. They've played, I want to say, 5 away series in the Bazball era. They've won the first test every time. So I do think that England can win the first test. Even as this sentence goes on, I'm convincing myself more and more.
The doubts are creeping in.
I think that England are very good at just hitting you with everything they've got out the blocks. And as much as people know what baseball is now, it is still something different. And I think it does take teams a second to adjust. I think you can adjust quite easily. And I think it becomes apparent that there are very simple tactical tweaks you can make that hamper England, that Australia did first ball of the last Ashes and were ridiculed for it, but they won that first test and they retained the Ashes. However, I'm going to say England will win the first test because I want to believe that it will be
You've got to have
close.
some hope.
Yes. I'm going to say Australia will win at Brisbane in the day-nighter. I'm going to say England will win at Adelaide. I'm going to say Australia will win at Melbourne.
And then it gets rained off in Sydney and we all go home.
Yes, 2-2. Yeah, I'm going to go 2-2.
He's gone 2-2. And is that a rain situation?
Yeah, I think there won't be like a score draw if the pitches are what we expect them to be. We will not run out of time in a game. The bowling attacks are too strong. The batting attacks are too... not flimsy, like they're both good, but I think they're both... for the most part, I think the best players on both teams are not going to hang about. Travis Head for Australia he is Bazball, as is Rishabh Pant. We're not the only people with attacking batters, and he will have a good series, I believe, even though he's in absolutely no form. Do you want to talk a bit about Australia? Do you have questions about them?
Let's talk about Australia. I mean, we have got our document here. And, you mentioned, of course, that...
he just got his CV up.
I've just got my CV up, yeah. That was the wrong one. Let's talk about Australia.
Let's talk about my skills.
Let's talk all of this. It's about me.
Something you should know about Jonny is that we helped him cut down his CV recently, me and some friends, and because it was 5 pages long and he couldn't figure out why it was 5 pages long, and in his head there was absolutely nothing that could go. One of the pages was a bullet point list of skills just down one side of the page with nothing on the right side. And
I also found that once Ben took a look at it and pressed the delete button a few times in between each section, that saved about a page and a half.
Yeah, you had
reams of space. It was like an Australian pitch, my CV. So there we go. Yeah, anyway, I don't know why I've still got my CV up. That's our document.
I have the squad here.
Let's have a look at the squad, and you could talk us through it, Charlie. So the first thing I've got written down here, race to open.
Yes. So ever since our friend David Warner retired, there's been some question marks about who opens with Usman Khawaja. It was Steve Smith for a while, which was unprecedented for one of the best batters in the world, or probably definitely the best batter of his generation, to stick his hand up to open. And I think everyone was very confused by it. It didn't last long. I think they just thought, why are we doing this? Why are we having our best batter open? And then ever since then, we've had Sam Constas, which was another great example of media hype after, no one hates Bazball more than the Australians. And then halfway through an Australia series where Jasprit Bumrah was making a fool out of the Aussie top order, they did probably their most Bazball selection of recent times. They threw a cap to someone in their early 20s, basically because he liked ramping people. And they just went, go ramp Bumrah. And he ramped Bumrah and everyone went crazy. Yeah. And he scored, I think his high score in Test cricket is 60. He ended the Australian summer as a cult hero. He just played in the West Indies. He didn't score a run. And he's gone. So I think Australia's dalliance with the Bazball selection is done. And
have they now doubled down on their hatred for it after that?
They've corrected hard the other way. They've gone with a guy in his mid-30s who is basically has the best domestic record over the past 2 years. He's called Jake Weatherald. And I don't know much about him, to be honest, but he has a good record. He is He averages 37 from 77 games. It's not bad, and I think you have to understand the context of the Sheffield Shield is actually a very good, very competitive competition with only 6 teams. It's not easy to play. It's not easy to get in your team, and so for him to have only played 77 games, I think does not indicate necessarily that he's not a good player. He has 1300s. He's been playing first-class cricket for 10 years. He was the leading run scorer in 2023-24. In the 2 seasons since then, basically of everyone else who was in contention to open, who is a specialist opener, he has twice as many runs as any of them. He has the best average. So it makes sense as a selection. However, they're probably not going to pick him.
Curveball. Why is that?
Because he might be their second best opener, but he's probably not in their 7 best batters. Right. Which I think there's 2 ways to think about it. There's, do you pick your best player in every position, which might leave one of your top 7 on the bench, because increasingly in modern cricket, the best players are middle order players. And Pat Cummins, the Aussie captain, is very much in the camp that you just pick your best 6 or your best 7 batters and you figure it out. And that will mean, if they do that, that Marnus Labuschagne, who is in fantastic form but is a number 3, will open. Cam Green, who is an all-rounder, will bat number 3. And Weatherald will miss out. Now, they've done that. They did that in the World Championship final this summer. Labuschagne didn't score any runs, Green didn't score any runs, and they lost.
You mentioned Pat Cummins. We should probably talk about him because there's been some question marks over his availability. Will miss the first test. How is that going to affect the Aussies?
It's a big opportunity for England. He's probably the second best bowler in the world after Bumrah. Some would have said the first, or a lot would have said the first before Bumrah had this crazy couple of years he's had. I think on paper, he's their attack leader, he's their captain, he's their best bowler. So it can never be a good thing. If you delve down deeper into that, he is their captain, but the man who's going to be their captain for that first test, Steve Smith, is probably a better captain. He isn't the captain because of Sandpapergate. Do you know about that?
No. Yes, I do. I know about this. Yes, this is one of the few things I do know. It's the sandpaper in the pocket. It's the ball tampering, isn't it?
Yeah, and he was captain then, so he was one of the players to take the fall. So he's no longer the captain. And to be fair, by now he probably wouldn't be anyway. But this is to say that Australia have lost their captain, yes, but they have a very capable deputy. Australia have lost their first change bowler, yes, meaning he'll come on after the opening bowlers. But they have an incredibly capable deputy in Scott Boland, who averages something like 13 in Test cricket. He fulfills that role typically anyway when he's in the team as first change bowler. And he terrorised England the last Ashes down. And
I think I read somewhere that Root really struggled.
Yeah, he's the exact type. Him and Josh Hazlewood and Pat Cummins, they're all very similar. But the thing is this is another tangent, but it's interesting. The thing is with Test cricket is that there's nothing wrong with having a samey attack if all your bowlers are the same thing. Because if that same thing is their right arm, they're fast medium, they're tall, they get bounce, they're accurate, they get enough movement, then you can afford to have 3 of them in your team because they are what you need. They are the best. And Australia have 3 in Boland, Cummins and Hazlewood. So even though they don't have Cummins, they have 2 more. And then they do have variation because the third guy, Mitch Starc, is huge. He's left arm, he swings it. So
the strength in depth is strong.
Yes, I think there's question marks about after Boland. Where do you go if Hazlewood or Starc were to be injured? And they're all very old. Is another important piece of context. We are looking at...
Well, you've written down here, are they too old?
Yeah. The answer is no.
I thought that was your... Yes, they are.
No, they're not too old. They are very old. There's one player under 30 in the squad. But they're old because none of them have done anything to get dropped for a very long period of time. They're extremely settled. If we want to say England are settled, Australia are ridiculously settled, with the exception of the who's going to open. They are very settled, and I think it goes both ways, because I think Australia are happy that they have a team that knows how to win the Ashes in Australia, and they, even if the going is tougher than usual, they won't worry because they're so used to doing this. I think England are happy, and Duckett has said as much, Ben Duckett, that they aren't going into it with players who are scarred from 4-0, 5-0, 5-0. So I think England are youthful in a way that will be beneficial to them because they don't have baggage. Australia are experienced in a way that will be useful to them.
So in a way, there are positives that both sides can take into this Ashes to believe that they've got a chance of doing the business.
They are two very good cricket teams. They are two contrasting styles. They really don't like each other, like properly don't like each other, because this traditionally there is, there's beers after the games, there's handshakes, there's behind closed doors, they're friendly. That didn't happen after the last Ashes. Right. They don't like each other. And they're going to want to knock each other's heads off, and it's going to be great.
That sounds like a great place to wrap up our little Ashes preview. So in terms of going forward then, we will be doing some debrief podcast episodes certainly I would say after each test. And we'll also try and do some watch-alongs wherever we're able to, when we're in the same place. We could even maybe do some Zoom. We can make use of Zoom maybe and watch some Ashes, watch some cricket. And I hope you'll stay with us for all of that. Was any final thoughts, Charlie, before we leave our opening gambit, our top order?
No, it's just let's bring it on. And I'm looking forward to this podcast because I feel like I now have a professional reason to stay up all night watching the Ashes, and that's what I'm going to do. Absolutely.
And I have a professional reason to learn about cricket from the great man himself. Wisden Cricket Papers, Charlie O'Brien. Thank you so much, Charlie. It's been a pleasure to be with you today, and I'll be with you again very shortly. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And we'll see you on the next one. Bring on the Ashes.